Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Kaden. I'll be your host today. I am sorry that I look a little rough. I am actively having to refilm this because this video is a month late. I'm trying to get better. I swear to God. The senioritis is kicking hard. I deeply apologize. However, it is now the month of April, and we are now 3 months into the year, and I've yet to do a reading wrap-up. So in this reading wrap-up, I'm just going to do a wrap-up of all 12 books that I've read so far this year. You only see this version of me twice because everything, like I said, was filmed a month ago. I apologize yet again, but really quickly before we get into the books, I just want to talk about how we do wrap-ups on this channel. So how I do wrap-ups is I go from the worst to the best rated of the month, just so that way we get through a lot of the garbage and get to end on like a nice little high note and just me ranting about the stuff that I loved. And yeah, so without further ado, let me get into the 12 books that I read in the first 3 months of this year. So getting into our first book, we have one star, and that was very surprising for me because it takes a lot for me to give out 1 star to a book. I'm usually very generous with my ratings, and it's also very hard to make me dislike a book this much. But one book has managed to do that so far, and that is Shy Girl by Mia Ballard. Where do I begin with this? So, if you don't know what Shy Girl is about, it is one of those, like, freak girl, like, weird girl book talk horror books. It is about this girl who has OCD, and she's in a little bit of a money trouble area. She's having a little bit of money trouble, and she goes onto this sugar baby dating site and meets this man named Nathaniel. Now, they meet for a bit, and he proposes her a very strange offer to be his dog for 8 hours of the day, and he'll pay her. Essentially, Nathaniel offers this woman that in exchange for paying off all of her debts and taking care of her rent and everything, she has to be his dog for 8 hours a day. To this, she agrees, and she is subsequently kidnapped and forced to be this man's dog. And in this captivity, she begins to become more animalistic and primal over the years of her abduction. Now, of course, this premise drew me in very hard. I was very into this. However, the premise is like not really at all what happens in this book. First of all, our main character's OCD is a caricature of it. She doesn't really have OCD. She is more extremely type A, and when she exhibits OCD traits such as like, I think she at one point does something with threes or like in a triangle or something, saying that that number grounds her, it is very quickly forgotten about, and she's just very type A and very shy, as the name suggests. But that's it. The chapters of this woman in captivity, which is the second half of this book. The first half of this book is leading up to the captivity. All those chapters are very short. They are like 2 to 3 page long sections. It's very poorly done, and you don't really get to see any of that animalistic, like, primal adaptation as you go. And when she does eventually, this woman, first of all, I really hate how this was done. I was really expecting it to go the route of, oh, this woman is, like, tapping into her freak, and she, like, either outmatches this guy's freak or perfectly matches it based off of how this was sold. Or I assumed that our main character would start to tap into that more, like, find a little bit of freedom in this, like, weird kink she is, not weird kink, but this kink that she is being forced to, portray for this man, if that's a really bad word for it. But anyway, this kink that she's living through, and she would find the courage to kill this man. Kind of what happens, but very much so not. We go the route of this woman turns into the dog. And the transformation happens in, like, 2 pages. I think I want to give it more credit than that, but it really is not that well done, and it's very annoying. The formatting in this book and the book overall is very poorly written, with sentences like being worded in the most clunky way ever, where I had to keep rereading them to really understand what was being said. And we would also switch tenses in the middle of some sentences, so that also sucked. There are sections where something is happening and it's not explicitly told whether something is happening in the current or in the past, so that's also confusing. I could go on for ages about this book, but this shit sucked. The writing sucked, the execution of this sucked, and also, this author, listen, I know everyone and their mother, whenever something is bad, accuses it of being AI. This was assisted by using AI. You have all the classic list things in threes, randomly, like... Next book that I have was a 2.5 star, and it was the only 2.5 star, and that is Romeo and Juliet, the graphic novel. Now, I read this for book club. I honestly really didn't want to pick it up, but my book club kind of just got shifted around and no one was really excited by anything that our librarian was suggesting we read for it, so we kind of just settled on this. And honestly, this was hard to pick up. This kind of sucked. I already read Romeo and Juliet freshman year, and also everyone knows the story. So I kind of it was very hard to sit down and want to read it, especially because I knew what the story was. I knew what I was reading. I didn't really give a fuck. It was whatever. Part of it was personal preference. I do still like the story of Romeo and Juliet. Obviously, I think there's so much interesting shit to go into with that story. I think there's so much to unpack in Romeo and Juliet beyond the star-crossed lovers and how that's become a thing for years. I just think this version sucked. I really did like the art. I think the art was beautiful. However, the writing, the misogyny, and it was so disgusting to read some parts of this. Okay, it's not that extreme, but there is so much just overt misogyny, which I get is inherent in the story because it's so fucking old. But also, it was just we're saying things. It was just unpleasant overall. I didn't really give a fuck. But the art was cool. I don't know, there's not much more to say on this. So anyway, the next book that I read was the one 3.5 star I've had this whole year, Box Hill by Adam Mars Jones. This is the book that the movie Pelion is based off of. I read this for my Freak Girl reading vlog for over Valentine's Day weekend, and I have some thoughts. So first of all, if you don't know what Box Hill is about, it is about this boy named Colin who, on his 18th birthday, he literally falls over this guy named Ray, who is 10 years older, so a very odd age gap, I will say. But Ray is this, dom biker guy, and this is the 1970s, so he's an OG, dom leather biker daddy guy. Sorry, I cringe myself out saying those words out loud, but that's what he is. And together they kind of enter this weird, not weird, but this kind of unhealthy dom sub dynamic for the next few years. I think it's over 7 years that these two men are together. I really did like some parts of the story. I found that while the dynamic was kind of, I would say, pretty unhealthy at times, I do think that there was a lot of very interesting dynamics that I liked between them. They both aren't very verbal communicators. Ray specifically is not a very verbal person. However, him and Colin still communicate very well without explicit communication, if that makes sense. And I really liked seeing that dynamic play out. There's a lot in this story that I find really interesting as well that I can't particularly remember, but I am very excited to see this in theaters. This also made me, I'm not very happy with the ending. I think this is already a very short book. I think this could have been shorter. I think the ending, 30-ish pages could have just been, cut or edited, because they kind of weren't really that interesting, and they didn't really give me all that much. I don't know, I kind of lost a lot of steam for this book. but I was very interested in this. Also, on the back, this book mentions a lot of themes that are very hardly touched on, such as homophobia and class. It was just those two themes that were not really talked about, though they were included. I don't really feel like homophobia or class had anything to do with the story, though it could just be dumb. Like, I could just have fully misread this book. I'm very excited to watch Pelion, though I think it is going to be a very different story than the book, because this is definitely not a like rom-com or dom-com, as Alexander Skarsgård called Pelion. So I think this is a very different story from what Pilion's gonna be, which makes me even more excited for it. Ignore some of the background noise. My neighbor is getting home right now, but our next 3.5-star book is The Gracier by Kim Liggett. This is a YA dystopian novel. Oh, with my bookmark still in it. This is a YA dystopian novel, and it's basically like The Handmaid's Tale meets Lord of the Flies. So in this world, our main character, Tyranny James, lives in this place called Garner County. And basically in Garner County, like I said, it's very Handmaid's Tale. Women aren't allowed to show anything, like not even ankles, like that's kind of vibe. In this world, women are believed to have magic. And it's believed that once they hit 16 years old, they can actually harness that magic to harm the men in the communities. The blurb specifically says, "We're told we have the power to lure grown men from their beds, make boys lose their mind, and drive the wives mad with jealousy." So essentially, it's just men being like, I can't control myself around teenage girls, and it's their fault. So anyway, once our characters reach 16 years old, all the 16-year-old girls are rounded up, they're sent off to the Gracier, and they're basically take a 2-day trek to this island, and it's like this very forested island with a clearing in the center, and this is like the safe area for the girls. And anytime they step out of this clearing, they will be hunted and killed by poachers. The girls that do not come back their pieces are basically gathered up and sold on the black market as like aphrodisiacs and stuff. Because once again, it is believed that these girls have magic. So yeah, a very grim story, or at least a very grim setup. I gave this a 3.5, however, because while there were some amazing lines of writing, I do think that there are some lines where, it is very Handmaid's Tale in the adult literature sense of, like, some of the lines that come from this book are very past YA. Like, they feel mature, and a lot of the writing, though, outside of that is, I feel, very weak, and I feel like this book, at the halfway point, not even, like, we go very off track from what I thought we were going to do, but basically our main character our main character's journey goes beyond just, like, the Gracier kind. I don't know how to explain it, but it's not just the Lord of the Flies ass thing that they're doing. We go beyond that, and I'm not really a big fan of it. There's also a romance, which I do feel as though did have a purpose. However, it just didn't work that well for me. I feel like for this book, a romance kind of knocked it down a notch. It just didn't feel super appropriate for what we were doing. I will say at the ending, we do a lot of really important... I feel like the themes of feminism in this novel are very well done, because they go beyond just, like, #girlboss and include, like, you can't be super mistrustful of all of the men. Like, some of the men are here to help. Not all men are evil, which I really did enjoy, because having some of the men as allies felt amazing, and it did, like, make the feminism feel more like what feminism's supposed to be. Overall, though, I don't know. I don't even think it was just that I had to read this for my young adult novels class. I just think overall this story was not that strong. It was very, very difficult for me to pick it up. And when I did pick it up, I was flying through it. I did enjoy my time. I don't think this is the best thing I've ever read. And honestly, I don't feel as though this is the strongest YA dystopia. It just felt kind of forgettable. Like, I don't think I'm going to remember this as much, and I have heard a lot of reviews call this very horrific, which I do think it is at times. However, this is not, like, a super horrific, disturbing story like it was marketed, at least when this first released. I don't know, it just kind of felt like it felt like Handmaid's Tale, Lord of the Flies, we dropped the ball. Like, it felt like that. I definitely want to check out more from this author, especially if it takes place. I think this as a series could work very well. If we kind of do a Hunger Games thing in the sense of, like, we follow the collapse of this society. Overall, forgettable, not my favorite read of the year, whatever. Next, I want to get into my 4-star books. So first up, we have Percy Jackson by Rick Riordan. I know this is a super niche, underground book. I'm not sure if you've really heard of it. But I read this from my young adult novels class, which I will say this is the one unit that I don't fully agree with being in my young adult novels course, because this and Harry Potter, which is the other book that we were given the choice to read, are both middle grade books. But I digress. But anyway, if you don't know what Percy Jackson is about, have you been living under a rock? It's about this kid named Percy Jackson, obviously, who finds out that he is a demigod. He is the child of Poseidon, and he has to start living at this camp called Camp Half-Blood, which is where half-bloods or demigods, I actually don't know if those are two different things. He's a half-blood, which means he's half god, half mortal. Anyway, he has started living at this camp. However, he doesn't get to enjoy his time there much, as in going to this camp, his mother is taken to the underworld, and he goes on a journey to find her and find this master weapon that Zeus had that is stolen and might cause basically World War III. So, yeah. I actually read this, I think maybe last year or the year before, and I didn't really like it that much when I first read it. However, reading this again, I felt like this is beautiful. This is such a well-written middle grade book. Like, I miss when we wrote books for children that had so much depth. Like, Percy's mom is such a complex, like, Percy's home life is very well written. Annabeth Chase's character is very complex. I loved it. The characters are just so well written. They feel like real people. The story is fun and it's magical without feeling too silly. Or, like, not too silly, but too, like, we're trying to target this to younger kids. It takes its audience seriously, and I really appreciate that. I will say that Percy Jackson's a little bit of, like, a Mary Sue, because, like, obviously, he's in a middle grade kid series, and we're putting this kid against gods, and he's winning some of these fights. So, you know, a little bit of a Mary Sue, but that's okay. I will say I did tab this and highlight it, and I felt very weird annotating Percy Jackson like an actual, like, literary text, which it is. I feel like there could be an argument to say that this is a literary text, but yeah, I very much so enjoyed this. This is such a fun book. I'm not sure if I will continue on with the series ever. I think I missed my time, but who knows? Maybe this is something that, like, once my kids get into in the future, I will fully dive into the series. So, I don't know. I really like this. This is really fun. This was a very nice, just, like, a very nice return to my childhood. Even though I wasn't a Percy Jackson kid, I felt like a kid while reading this, and that's all that matters. Then, our next 4-star book takes a massive switch, and that is Crash by J.G. Ballard. And if you don't know what this book is about, this is about a group of omnisexual car crash fetishists. Now, to be a little bit more specific, this book follows our main character, James Ballard. It follows our narrator, James Ballard, as he gets into a car accident. And in the wake of this car accident, where he crashes into this married couple, and the husband's killed. And in the hospital after this crash, James starts to realize, or I'm going to call him Ballard because the text refers to him as Ballard. Ballard begins to realize that he's starting to see things more differently. He is starting to see things in a more perverse light, more than usual. Him and his wife are already freaks. Like, they're some kinky motherfuckers, and I love that. I love that as well, because I will say, I really like that this book lets our female characters be freaks, and doesn't, like, it isn't weird about it, it isn't misogynist about it. Our author's just like, yeah, and there's some freaky bitches, and I'm like, yes, I love that. But anyway, and Ballard starts to meet up with the wife of the man that was killed, and they start to go and meet this group of other people who are just like them through our one man who, like, pretty much runs this club named Robert Vaughn. Now, Vaughn is, like, the originator of car crash fetishism, I guess. Like, this man is a freak. And Ballard is a little gay for him as well. He's very gay for him throughout the narrative. And they do each other, actually. They fall. I gave this a 4-star because the first, I want to say 2/3 of this book are beautiful. They are magnificent. They're perverse. They're everything that I wanted. The last third of this book did drop the ball for me a little bit, because we start the book knowing how the book is going to end, and we don't really do anything differently. We just, the last third of this book is kind of just like, and we had sex here, and we did this, and then it also car crash, and also it just felt very repetitive. And also this book tried to be a little too transgressive for my liking. We mentioned pedophilia a couple of times. It's not a central theme of the plot. It's just like some fucking word or some sentences are like, you don't need to include that. You're clearly trying to be edgy, and I did not appreciate that. And it took me out of the story and removed me from enjoying this, because this is a delicious, like, perverse, like, tale, and then you're adding just edgy shit to it. It was a little bit annoying. However, the first 2/3 of the book really did carry. I was, like, so into it. I ate this book up. I felt like I was being represented almost. To be clear, there is some nuance to that statement, and that statement is a lot more for me than for you to understand, because I'm not a car crash fetishist, but I'm just saying I'm a freak on this. This matched my freak to an extent. Okay, not when we're trying to be edgy over here, but yeah. I really fucked with this. I'm so excited to watch the movie. I still haven't watched the movie yet. I know I said I would. I think I'm going to keep this book at a 4-star, though. I know I said during the Freak Girl reading vlog, which I did also read this during, I should mention. I know I said that the rating was subject to change. I think a 4 is perfect for it, though. If the movie is like 10 million times better, though, this may drop. We'll see. But anyway, low-key peak. Now, my last 4-star book I also read from my Freak Girl reading vlog, and that is Sky Daddy by Kate Folk. Now, this is a book about a woman who wants to get married to a plane. And this woman's view is that basically one day she will be flying in a plane as a passenger, and the plane becomes so obsessed over her as a passenger that it decides to crash and take everyone with it, thus ending in their marriage, pretty much. I loved this so much because, first of all, I thought that was going to be it. I thought that was kind of the plot of the book. I thought it was just this woman who wants to, like, get freaky and die. I thought it was just kind of like Crash, but with planes, at least. Kind of, in a sense. But, this was a lot more than that. This was a very beautiful story. The writing in this was amazing. Every page I just loved. I loved so much. I fell in love with our main character. Her humor is very I love the way her humor comes up in the narrative. It's not too like I'm trying to be witty and funny. It's a very like it makes sense for the story. I think the way that our main character interacts with people is so interesting as well. I would honestly kill to like read this over for the first time again because this was truly just such a fun experience. There wasn't a second where I was bored. I was invested the whole way through. I was so interested, and also there's so many beautiful themes about community, about acceptance. And I said this in my Freak Girl reading vlog, but I just worded it very badly. But there is some themes about self-acceptance, especially with this like unusual attraction that our main character has, and the way that people around her, when she confesses it, um the way that people around her honestly are obviously shocked at first, but like come to love and accept our main character, I find very beautiful, and I find very relatable to myself because once again, while I don't want to be married to a plane, I myself, like I said, am a freak. And there are things that I've told my friends that I like. I'm trying to like not reveal too much on the internet, but also I'm gonna low-key overshare. I've told my friends about some kinky shit that I liked, and I've honestly had the same fear that our main character has throughout this book of like, they don't want me, they're not gonna accept me, they're gonna be weirded the fuck out, and I'm gonna be judged for it. And then it's just like nothing. They just kind of bat their eyes and go, okay, cool. And I love that. And this book, very much so, like, I just love the themes of community and acceptance. It's so beautiful. This is so well done. I honestly may raise this rating. I think a 4 is appropriate because I have not thought about it very much. Even though I loved this book, I don't know. I think I may actually raise this to a 4.5. I think this is that good. I really like this. Now let's get into my 4.5 stars that I've had so far this year. So first up is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I borrowed this from my friend. Like, she read it once it came out, and then I borrowed it very shortly after. And it took me like a year to read it, but I finally read it and I fell in love. So this book is an Omegaverse romance. This is a published Omegaverse romance, which honestly made me a little bit excited because I was like, that's really interesting. And also I know Ali Hazelwood is obviously a fan fiction writer, or was, not anymore, I don't think. Probably. Anyway, Ali Hazelwood wrote/writes fan fiction, so like I know this is gonna be bomb, and I also loved The Love Hypothesis, so this is gonna be right up my alley. When I tell you bitches, this book exceeded the fuck out of my expectations. I mean it. This was amazing. So Bride follows our main character, and she is a vampire, and she is the daughter of the king of the vampire realm. Basically, our world is split into 3 realms: the werewolves, the vampires, and the humans. Our main character was sent to live with the humans. Basically, if you're the child of royalty of any of these realms, you are sent to another realm to basically be held as like, hey, if you do some fuck shit to us, if you try to start war here, we have ransom. It's like low-key really fucked up. Now in adulthood, she ends up in an arranged marriage with the alpha of the werewolves. And this is a very like whatever thing, but our main character just wants to do this so that way she can find her best friend, who's a human who went missing several months ago, and she has no clue what the fuck happened to her. And our main character starts living with this werewolf, and they end up obviously falling in love, and it is an amazing story. There is so much to get into with this book. First of all, this book had so much political intrigue. I was like genuinely surprised because this is like the romance is honestly like only half of the book. Like it's obviously it's a romance book, but also this had like so much political intrigue of like, oh, and now this of like protecting this girl in the werewolf realm against kidnappings, and like our main character almost gets assassinated at one point, and it's like crazy. There's so much shit happening, and it of course involves the best friends, the missing best friend, and like her disappearance also like becomes a massive plot point. It's so interesting. This is the type of romance that I love, where we do a lot of political intrigue, and like, or like not political intrigue, where we do a lot of other stuff outside of just the romance, and we get to know our characters outside of the romance. I loved it. It was very entertaining. I was on the edge of my seat for some parts. It was crazy. It honestly took all of the parts that I loved about Twisted Love, which was also a book that I almost loved, except that one fucked me up. Anna Huang, When I See You, I swear to God it's on site, because that book was ass. Got my expectations up to here. You got my hopes up to here, and you just fucking, Anyway, that was a year ago. But this book, like, stuck the landing. The third act breakup is, like, it makes sense for the story. It's done very well, and the main guy isn't a fucking asshole the whole time, and the bar is very low. But I love this book. I love this book. I cannot wait to get my hands on the second one. I'm gonna devour this fucking series like no other. This is so peak. I love Ali Hazelwood. Oh my god, her books are so good. The next book that I read, is definitely a genre switch. It also has a lot of political intrigue, but in a very different way. This is a young adult historical fiction called If I Betray You, or I Must Betray You. Sorry. I Must Betray You by... Fuck, I forgot the author's name. This is the author's name. This was my book club's November/December book club pick. I think it was low-key a dumb way to do that, but I digress. But this is a book about the But If I Must Betray You, it follows our main character, who is a teenage boy in the during the 1980s in Romania, when Romania was under communist regime. And our main character, like right off the bat, becomes an informant for the government, and we follow him as he tries to navigate being an informant for the government with his family while the communist regime crumbles around him. Now, this book, I will say there were some parts that I don't think were done that well. Primarily, our main character throughout the book is very much so like, I can't believe I'm an informant for my family, I'm such a traitor, etc., etc., but we see very little of him having to be an informant. Him being an informant is honestly not the biggest part of the book, outside of, like, him giving up information on his American friend that he makes, and it's just like, it's whatever. I don't think the informant piece of this is the most important part of the book, even though it is throughout our main character's narration and in the very title of the book. It's not done that well. I honestly wish we saw a little bit more of it. I wish the stakes were a little bit higher in that aspect. But that's kind of it. That's kind of my only complaint with this book. I think it was a very hard read, because first of all, you're thrown into this world, and it feels very like what I imagine. I haven't read 1984, but it's what I imagine it's like, minus the technology. It's very like, you can't speak freely even in your own house. The government is always listening to you, etc., etc. It's terrifying. The atmosphere of this book, genuinely, I was like, the atmosphere of this book is very tense, it's very stressful, and it's so sad because you hear things like, our main character talks to this girl he really likes, and he's like, she's like, oh my god, I've had a can of Coke before, and he's amazed by this fact, and he watches this video that that the American that he made friends with, the American's friends sent him a video, and he invited our main character to watch it, and he's like looking at this bowl of bananas, and he's appalled that they aren't eating them. He gets annoyed that they're not eating them, and that they're eating anything else in this like fridge full of food that they have, and he's surprised that that's a thing people have. And it's so sad, because it's just like, holy shit, like those are such normal things that we take for granted day to day, and like were such popular things like that we were taking for granted even in the 80s. And this was like a dream for this kid. Like this was so out of the realm of possibility that it was like a life goal to eat a banana one day. Like it's so crazy. The writing of this is amazing. It feels very much so like a historical novel. The writing is beautiful. It reads very much so like it was written in the 80s, like, like books that were written in the 80s have that specific style of like, I don't know how to explain it, but it feels like an old historical novel. I really appreciated it. It never felt too like I'm being done, like information's being thrown at me about the political aspect, the political elements of this time, because your main character also doesn't really understand that much about politics and what's happening around him, because he's sheltered from anything other than like supporting communism by his government. All he understands is that communism is bad and like actively fucking him over, but that's it. It's very well done. I really liked this novel. It felt like a wake-up call, and it was so interesting to watch a communist regime crumble in real time. It happens at the end of the book, and it's disturbing. This book does get very disturbing because you do see a lot of how the government treated its prisoners and those who were protesting the government. Even ones that were just there, even children that were just there near the protest are arrested for protesting, and fucked up shit happens, and it's just so heartbreaking and bleak. But at the same time, this book is so hopeful, because as everything is happening and shit is hitting the fan, you know that everyone is reaching freedom to maybe not completely. Obviously, when shit like this happens, it takes a long time to recover, but it's just so like inspiring to see like we're getting free, we're one step closer to having our lives with us again. It's amazing. I really love this book. I want to read more from this author. I think this was really well done. It makes me really want to research this time period, because this was a historical event that I didn't even really know happened. And even if I ever was maybe mildly aware of it, I never knew the actual details. And it also provides so much clarity on what living in a communist regime was like at the time, and like just how dystopian that really was. It's crazy. I loved it. It was a fantastic novel. I would read it again. So the next book that I read, the next 4.5 star that I have, is very hard for me to talk about because this is and it is Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. I read this for my last unit in young adult novels, and basically it is about this girl named Claudia who she comes back from summer break going into 8th grade from like going to her grandma's house. She comes back, she realizes that her best friend Monday is nowhere to be seen, but it's not really raising any red flags yet. It's like, oh, maybe she's sick today or just couldn't come say hi, and I'll see her at school. And then Monday doesn't appear at school. And on the back it says, "This is the story of how my best friend disappeared, how nobody noticed she was gone except me, and how nobody cared until they found her 1 year later." This book is so incredibly dark. This is my first Tiffany D. Jackson, and I am in love. Or at least the first one that I can read in full. I tried to read Allegedly a few years back, and I couldn't. I'm going to try again soon, but, I need a break from her after this one, because first of all, this mystery, this is a thriller slash mystery novel, is very well written. Our main character, well, maybe not the brightest at all, which is when I get into the complaints I'll mention, But our main character is very well built. The mystery makes a lot of sense. It's very realistic. Um, it's heart-wrenching. This book is fucking heart-wrenching. For the last maybe like 50 to 100 pages, I don't think I stopped crying because it just gets so incredibly sad and dark. And you know how it's gonna end, and then there's writing that just stabs you through the heart. Tiffany D. Jackson wanted me dead, is what I'm trying to say. Um, also, there is so much, there are so many, like, clues leading up to this, and signs that you start to realize what happened to Monday. What can happen when we don't take care of the people in our community, when we don't notice blaring red sirens saying something is wrong. This was fantastic. This was fantastic. I love this so much. However, I do think there were some pieces of this that weren't done that well. Our main character, I do apologize. Upon editing, I am realizing that I can't go into a lot of depth about what specifically I don't like about Claudia as a main character, because it does give away kind of what, at least the way I talked about it, it kind of gives away what actually happened to Monday. However, Claudia is just very blind. She's very blind to a lot of those massive sirens that I was talking about, of like, hey, something is wrong. And I don't know if it's because I grew up, like, in a way where now as an adult I can see those signs for what they are. But still, I don't know. I feel like we could have written her in a way where she at least recognized some of it, or recognized that there was a problem. You know? Anyway, I digress. Or, I don't digress, but I concede. This was a very disturbing thrill. Like, please, even though this is young adult, like, make sure you're prepared to, like, read some very harsh shit, because our main character is 13 going on 14, and the best friend and Monday was 13 at the time that this crime happens. So it's very harsh to read. It's very hard. It's just such a well-written novel, though, and I think it's such an amazing story, and I would highly recommend this. This is a fantastic thriller, and one that will stick with me probably forever. And now we are on to our last book, my one 5-star of the year so far, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I read this for AP Lit, and I fell in love. Frankenstein has been my favorite story for years already, because I knew, to an extent, that, like, the creature was always misunderstood. Like, I have known that for years. However, actually reading this, yeah, this is, like, I think this is one of my favorite books of all time, as of right now. Also, I love doing this with books I annotate. I didn't do that for Monday Is Not Coming. I still have to finish annotating Monday Is Not Coming, because I ran out of time and tabs. If you don't know what Frankenstein is about, Frankenstein is about this scientist named Victor Frankenstein, which, by the way, Frankenstein is the scientist, not the creature. Want to clarify that. I know that's pretty much like a fact that everyone knows now, but I always want to reiterate that, like, it's an important thing to remember. And this novel is it's a novel about identity, about humanity, and morality. It's amazing. I love this. There are so many quotes. I want this whole book just tattooed all over me. There's so many quotes that I just fall in love with. I'll read to you my favorite quote specifically, because I just feel like this is such an example of, like, how timeless that this story is, and also just, like, how beautiful Mary Shelley's writing is. So the context of this quote is that the creature is threatening Victor to make him to make the creature a companion. That's all he wants in this world, is companion and love and companionship. And he has been everywhere he's gone, shit on and screamed at and attacked and etc., etc. So the creature, as a threat, says, "If I cannot inspire love, I will cause fear, and chiefly towards you, my arch enemy, because my creator, do I swear, inextinguishable hatred." I love this. I love this. I love this so much. I want, "If I cannot inspire love, I will cause fear," tattooed on me. That is such a beautiful quote, and I love it so much. I love this book. It is beautiful. It is gothic. The atmosphere is amazing. It's also a very easy read. Even though it is kind of older English, it is still very easy for you to understand. I love this. I love this. I don't think that there will be a time where this book is not like deeply entrenched in me as a person. This like just is such a beautiful reflection on humanity and identity. And oh, I love this so much. I also like anytime I flip through this, like when I was trying to fill out stuff for my AP Lit class, I would read some of these quotes and I'd almost start tearing up because of just how heart-wrenching the story is, specifically the creature's own tale of his life is so sad. And it's just all he wishes in this world is to be loved. And he's turned into something that he doesn't want to be because people refuse to look past the surface level and try to understand him as a person. And I love that. I love that so much. I think it's still such a relevant thing. I could write a million fucking essays on this book. I love it so much. I would highly recommend. This is a beautiful piece of fiction, and it's just amazing. Give your time to it. This is the one thing that I would recommend to anyone in life ever. So my next 5-star book is The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. And I actually finished this today, so this review may change, but I don't think that this is going to drop from a 5. This is a This is a magical realism book, where the Underground Railroad is a real railroad. It is magical realism, historical fiction, I would say. Starting off, I do want to point out that personally, I did not enjoy this book all that much. Well, I had a lot of enjoyment. It just wasn't 5-star for me. But I do think this book overall is very important, and what it has to say goes beyond my personal enjoyment in the rating. I feel like this book stands by itself and is like an objectively 5-star piece. In this book, we follow a slave named Cora as she and her friend Caesar escape, and she takes the Underground Railroads through several states as she is going on this journey to escape slavery. This book is fantastic. The writing is immaculate. There are so many pieces of writing that I feel like this is a book that should be taught beyond. I feel like this should just be general curriculum. This is a very hard book to read because, especially in the first section, there is very realistic depictions of slavery. And by that, I mean you're reading, like, a man get his stuff chopped off, put in his mouth, sewn his mouth shut, and set on fire. Like, real stuff, real horrific shit that was happening to slaves. And not only then, but there is several other points in the novel where they reach this threshold and honestly push past it. And it is very important. None of it is done for shock value. It is all to show the reader what being a Black person was like back then and just how demeaning and dehumanizing this is. And there are so many themes in this book that are so well done of ownership and freedom and hope and identity that are beautiful, and they're so well written and so well thought out. And I would love to study and return to this book at several points in my life. it's just so impactful. I will say this is not a book that I would recommend picking up if you are like, this isn't really a book that you read in one sitting or like read for personal enjoyment. This is more a book that you are meant to read and interact with and study. I feel like this is more like a book that is put into curriculum and taught and like studied rather than sat and read leisurely. You know what I mean? Also, this is this is an AP Lit book that I've read. My annotations are pretty rough for this because my highlighter died throughout this book, and also I ran out of tabs and have yet to grab more. So my annotations do look lackluster, but I wrote so much in this book. Like, let me show you one of the sections. There are context chapters for some of the characters throughout the narrative, and like, look at this, I'm creating character charts, I'm like bringing up themes. And this book is so easy to study, I feel like, because there's so much you get from it, and it's not difficult to understand by any means. A lot of the themes are very easy to pick up on and are very easy to understand what the author is trying to say. I'm honestly very excited to write an essay about this book for AP Lit because I think there's so many things that I really want to sit and talk about with. However, I don't think my teacher for what our essays are going to be on is going to let me really talk about it the way that I want to, which is like, okay, I guess, but whatever. I think this is honestly one of the most important novels of this century. This is an unflinching look at slavery and honestly the effects of it, and it's a really honest look at just how dehumanized Black people were, because I think while it is taught how dehumanized Black people were during slavery, reading it and experiencing it with our character, it hits so much more, and it honestly grounds you and makes you really think about, like, we used to treat other human beings just so subhuman that even in reading a character's actual experience of it, it's just so hard to comprehend just how evil it was and just how horrible some of these things are. And it's just such a beautifully well-crafted piece. You can read and feel how much love went into this. And like I said, I want to return to this so many times. This is a fantastic book, and I highly recommend it to anyone who is willing to give their time to this. This is a book that you work through slowly. It's amazing. I love this. I really want to read more from this author after this. And that is officially all of the books that I read so far this year. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Let me know if you have any thoughts on these books down below, if you want to read them, if you have read them. Give me your TBR, or not your TBRs. Tell me what you read as well. Give me recommendations. I'm always open. And yeah. If you are looking for more bookish content, horror content, or movie content, I'm trying to move into those latter two. More specifically the movies, I'm trying so hard to do. I swear to God, I know I've been saying it since the creation of this channel, but I do mean it. But anyway, if you're interested in any of that, please hit please subscribe, you know, you support me, like the video, etc. Because this is all I want to do. This is amazing. I love getting to come on here and talk to this stuff about you guys, even if I am just screaming into the void. I love you guys all so much. Have an amazing day. Goodbye!